Hello and welcome to another episode of Rebel Therapy Podcast. I'm your host, Katie.
And I am your other host, Michelle. Welcome.
And we are very lucky today to be joined by one of my very good friends, Jim Murray, prop master extraordinaire. I am not going to spend time introducing him. I'd rather hear from you, Jim. Thank you for joining us. Can you tell us just a little bit about yourself and what you do and what it is to be a prop master?
So I'm a prop master in IATSE 873, which is a local union here in Toronto. Basically what I do is anything actors touch, like food, rings, watches, weapons, guns, anything along those lines, I source, build, buy, and provide on the day of shooting. So whether we need multiples of that thing, if it's a stab, somebody gets stabbed with a knife, I have to figure out what versions of that knife we need. We need the stunt versions, the rubber versions, the stab rigs, all of those different things. So I have to figure out what that is, depending on the show, be a science fiction, period piece, contemporary, have that approved by the director, and then provide it on the day with my team. I've been doing this about 28 years, and I've worked on a variety of shows from science fiction to horror. I did the Saw movies for years. I worked on Star Trek Strange New Worlds. I did a show called The Expanse. I did Welcome to Derry. I did The Terminalist, a Chris Pratt thing for Amazon. So I try to diversify what I do to keep it interesting. So sometimes I'll be working in the 1960s, and sometimes I'll be working in future space stuff. So that's pretty much my job.
So you already have a bit of a following, I think, don't you? You're quite famous in your space for especially some of these well-known shows.
Yeah, well, a couple of years ago, The Expanse was canceled, and I kind of stirred it up. I broke my NDA, and I started pushing people to. There was this charge to bring back the show, and there was a petition, but the fans were at the wrong streaming network. So I kind of guided them against my agreement as to which network to go to, and that kind of got me some street cred and in trouble from the studio. But it was worth it because we did get picked up. We got the pickup again, so we got another 4 seasons out of it.
Very cool. So what I'm actually kind of hearing you say, I would imagine that one of the key elements of your job is creativity, right? Yeah. Flexibility. Mm-hmm. And I imagine the ability to pivot given all the egos involved in terms of different requirements and expectations and all these sorts of things. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, pivoting is important because everything changes. It doesn't matter how well you prep things, anything can go sideways. Once you get it to the floor, which is the shooting floor where we're actually shooting this TV show or the film, anything that the best plan always goes sideways. Or at last minute, the director will come up and ask for a last minute request, or the actor won't like this, or whatever. So you gotta always you have to cover your bases. In our world, one is none. So we always have backups of everything, because if something breaks or something is faulty during shooting, like, I don't know, a sword that lights up and that doesn't work, we have to have a backup. It slows down that train, because once it's going, it doesn't stop. And it's a lot of money on the line when you're actually shooting. And that goes for the entire run of the show. Like if we know that we have builds that are going to play 4 weeks out, we have to keep on track of those builds while we're doing what we're doing and shooting and facilitating the needs that are on set right now, but make sure that this is deliverable, because there's never any waiting. It's a schedule-based career where everything has to be mapped out. So it's hard because you're constantly dealing with what's shooting, what's wrapping, and then what's coming up. So you've got to have really good skills to spread that kind of stuff out.
Yeah, I'm curious if you have an example of like something going really sideways that's like memorable for you that won't, it's not in an NDA.
I mean, like anytime you have electronics on set, I was on space shows for years and trying to figure out how to not have the visors. Because in some instances, they'll VFX the visors. They'll put them in afterwards with visual effects. But in most cases, we'll use, and that's quite expensive. So every single shot, they have to lay in the visor. So we can have the visor come out. But when the visors are in place and the actors are breathing and all the heat from their spacesuits are going right up to their head because heat rises, their visors fog up. Everybody turns to me like I'm like some scientist that knows how to do this, but I'm not. Like I'm a jack of all trades and we figured this shit out. But at the end of the day, I don't know how to make a visor. I do now. But if the visors start fogging up, everybody is in your shit. So I was on The Expanse, I was on Star Trek, and visor fog up was a big deal. You can put on the sprays. So that's an instance where, like, you've spent $10,000 to $30,000 on building a space helmet, and then you're shooting it and it's fogging up, and everyone's like, "Why isn't this working?" And we're making prototypes that have to work 100% of the time with little money that we don't have. They would really prototype something, and for the duration of the shoot, it has to work. So, like, any instance like that, you have to keep it cool, because you can't just be there and be like, "I don't know." So you always have to present a way out or an idea, or, "Hey, I think we could try this." And keep your cool, because if you lose your shit, everybody loses their shit. It's a huge ripple, right? And you're dealing with all these crazy egos, and you're dealing with this time frame, and you're dealing with actors who don't want to be in spacesuits, that we're just jamming them in, and they've got a microphone, and they've got air circulating over their face, and they've got an earbud, and all of these things, and lights. So you just have to have a plan, even though you don't have a plan. You have to be cool about it.
How have you developed that skill? I'm curious. The ability to just be like, okay, everybody's freaking out, everybody's looking at me, and like, I actually don't know, but I have to be like, I will know. I am gonna figure this out. How'd you learn that skill?
We call it MacGyvering on sets, I guess now. I started in the non-union world, so you kind of do everything there, which is a great training ground for this kind of stuff. You just have to kind of lean into it. Like, if you're going to get into a show that has all kinds of electronics and stuff on that, you either have to have some tech on set that knows that stuff, and often we'll bring those people in, but inevitably I'm still the person in charge of all that stuff. So you just trial and error, and just be like, it's always better to try something than just to throw your hands up. Even if that something might not work and you're going to be accountable for it later, I think in the situation it's better to be like, okay, I'm going to give this a go and hope that it'll work. And experience also helps as well, and making mistakes earlier on. And we did that a lot on some of these shows, to where we got to Star Trek and the helmets were amazing and the air circulation was incredible. And we could go to a company like Legacy who's done this before, but those suits are hundreds of thousands of dollars and we didn't have that much to spend. So you just kind of figure it out and you keep it cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
So some of the like, honestly, it sounds like what it is. It sounds like almost an approach to being a human, right? You started as a kid and you don't really know anything. And so with the right kind of support, ideally you try a bunch of stuff. Often you try a bunch of dumb stuff that doesn't work. And then you learn from that and go, okay, well, that, clearly did not get me the outcome that I wanted to. But there's a concept in Gestalt where we look at everything like an experiment. And so the benefit there is that if I don't have a specific outcome in mind, or at least I don't know what the outcome's going to be, it's not a pass or fail. It's not a good or bad. It's just, did it work for me? Is where I am now at the end of this experiment where I want to be, or do I want to try something else? And I think it's so important for learning, and you're sort of speaking to that, right? Being able to just, I think, to also have the self-support. I want to ask you about that. The self-support to be able to put yourself in a position where you're like, I don't know, I might crash and burn and I'll probably not die. So I'm going to give that a try and then see where we are at the end of it. Like, there's a real skill to being able to foster that level of confidence in yourself, right? To Michelle's earlier point, you might not know the answer, but you're stepping in going, well, I don't know the answer now, but I'm pretty confident in my ability to find an answer.
Yeah,
so has
absolutely.
that always been easy for you?
No, but when you're on a film set and you're the head of the department, you're accountable for that kind of thing. And I think when I first started, I struggled with that, because with it comes a lot of like pushing away the noise and being and focusing in on the moment, and being like, because you've got these people breathing down your neck and all over you as to why the fuck aren't we shooting? Like, what's going on? So you just have to push that noise away and try and get to the core of the problem and offer solutions. And I think as you get more confident with what your abilities, that comes out. But yet there's a cockiness to it, I guess, too. And I think I've always had that little bit of cockiness with that kind of stuff. Yeah. So you get better as you do more. So I don't know if, when I was younger, I don't know if I had that support, or that was core to that. I was a little bit more nervous about trying different things. But as you gain experience, and if you come up with a plan, you got to follow it through as well. So this is my plan for how we're going to execute this. you got to follow through. But you also have to think about all the problems that could come along, right? So you're always thinking the what ifs, like how could this go sideways? How could this be a shitstorm? How do I cover my ass if it is? So we try to have backups for everything.
I wonder if there is also like, as you're saying, like maybe this wasn't true when you first started or when you were a kid, but like if now because you have the experience and you're pretty sure you can figure something out, like if there is that like spike of excitement when something goes wrong, like not that you would ever want it to go wrong, right? Like obviously you're saying like you plan for hours and hours to make sure it does not go wrong.
Yeah.
But when it does, that kind of like, oh, like I'm activated, like I am on. I got to do this thing.
That's a really funny point. You're right, and I would never say this on set,
Well, you,
but and especially because I've got a team, so I'm off the floor prepping the episodes or prepping whatever, and then I've got my on-set team, and
Mm,
they're still gathering all these skills.
mm.
So I hand this stuff off to them with this cocky attitude of it's gonna fucking work. And when it doesn't, their heads implode because they haven't got the skills. They do really well, and I've got really great people working for me, but you can't anticipate everything. And I get these crazy phone calls, and I'm like, are you fucking, because you didn't anticipate that one thing that actually happened.
Yep.
But it's always exciting because then you have to figure out that problem. But I'm
Yeah.
actually probably tipping into the latter part of my career where I'm like, oh God, really? And it's more frustrating now, but it is still exciting to solve the problems. Because after you do something for so long, it becomes the same. Even if it's 1960s or space, you're still providing things. But when there's challenges, the challenges are fun.
And then you figure it out and you feel like accomplished, I can imagine, right? Like,
Yeah.
especially when you said like there's so much pressure and everything kind of like riding on it, and you having this feeling of like, oh, actually, I don't know, but I have to figure it out. And then you do, like, I can imagine that feels amazing.
It does, yes. And when you can walk away knowing that you're not going to get in trouble, it's really good. It is really quite good to figure those things out. And then you take that and you move along with it. But it still creates a ripple because everybody wants everything to be perfect.
Yeah.
Like, and it's never gonna, like, we're working in an industry that's kind of organic. And I tell this to my teams. We are like, today is going to be an organic day. And usually that means it's going to be a shitstorm because anything we could plan for, we're going to be hit with all kinds of requests. These actors are difficult. The director's in a bad mood. We've only got so many hours to shoot. So let's just approach this day as an organic day and see how it works. And a lot of people don't really like that.
Mm.
But you have to kind of just roll with the shit that's presented to you. And it's going to be sometimes good and sometimes it's going to be bad. It
well,
totally is life with tons
and
of ego.
depends if you go and you see how it goes. It's funny you talk about that because often when I'm talking to parents in a therapy session, right, parents of kids who want to protect their children from stress, which I get as a parent myself, right? On one hand, I'd like my kid to always be happy and never have anything bad happen to him. The reality of this world and this life is that that's not possible. And so what I'm kind of hearing you say, Jim, is that you've developed a tolerance for risk and the uncertainty that goes along with risk. But there's also, so the upside of the uncertainty, I think for you is perhaps excitement when things are happening, right? Sometimes I'll talk to people and they say, well, I do this in my job and my job has made me really good at this. And I'll push back and say, I think more likely what happened is that you came to that job or career with a particular skill set. You were already predisposed to have the ability to do this. And then through your job, you've expanded your skill set or you've enhanced your skill or whatever. But it's interesting to me that you chose a career that required you to pivot and be comfortable with uncertainty and risk and have that little bit of cockiness, right, to sort of get you through. Did you know that you wanted to work in props? When did you
No,
decide?
no,
How
I
did
didn't.
you come to that?
I was working, I started volunteering after school and I was working as a grip and electric, and it was wintertime, and Seaway, which is the cable that runs all the big lights. So it's the big draw cable, is really heavy and really long. And somebody's like, take that Seaway and roll it up and take it out of the truck. And it was so heavy and it was frozen. I was like, I don't want to do this. Sucks. This isn't creative at all. So somebody said, hey, we need a prop master. Can you do this? I was like, absolutely. Didn't even know what it was. I just jumped in. And it was thankfully it was a non-union show. And I cut my teeth on those non-union shows, which were like 1990s martial arts movies, like with Jeff Wincott back in the day. And they were awful, but I got to learn a bunch from that. And through that, you get to learn to pivot. Like if you're a grip or an electric on a film set, and we say this a lot, they're pulling the same lights off the truck often every day.
Yeah.
There's every day we're a food scene one day. The next day we're in like full military kits. The next day we're whatever, in like a submarine. So we're always all over the place and we have to provide those things. So the creativity is the excitement of it for sure.
Yeah.
And when I got into it, I didn't realize that that was there. And I didn't understand the pivot because I think when I got into it, I was a little bit like, it's going to be like this. And you lay it all out and here's all your stuff. But once you're on set, again, that organic trait of what film is and creating art and working with a bunch of people and seeing how it's working changes the game really fast. And that's, if anything, I think that's the greatest thing is learning that quality.
Yeah, and then like kind of to Katie's point, like did that feel like a match right away because you kind of like had these skills that you had cultivated already through your life, or even just like, predispositions to things, or just like once you kind of hit there, I hear what you're saying, you had to learn a lot and kind of figure out what the job actually was. But were there things where you're like, oh, that fits really nicely with what I already know how to do?
It's funny because I don't think I was equipped for that. I was a bit more of like a rigid thinker, and it's like, okay, we'll do it this way. And I didn't have the wisdom, I guess, to know that things could be bigger than they are. And that's just how the world works on many levels, not just this level. So I think it was an excellent exercise to learn those things quickly and then not push back on them.
What made you not quit? Like, it's like you come in, and I'm thinking even of myself at that age, it's like I would want this sense of like, and then this happens, and then this happens, and then this, and like we've planned it all out and whatever, and then it's like a shit show. Like, what made you stick with it?
I think because it's the creativity and the wild west of it. It was like one time I'd be working on a bad martial arts movie, and then I would be working on a really bad TV space show back in the day. And I think that variance and meeting all these different people that were kind of the same vibe as I was in that creative world, it was really exciting. And I think it was the perfect time to get into it at that age because I was open to all of those ideas and that flow. So you just look it up like a sponge.
So a little bit of luck, perhaps in terms of timing, which I think is always part of the equation,
yes.
maybe. Yeah. But also, despite what I'm hearing you say now is like, despite sort of what life was like leading up to that moment, you said you called yourself a bit of a linear thinker, and I find that fascinating because I've only known you as the creative juggernaut that you are now. It makes me wonder if you somehow managed to survive, as many of us do, our childhoods that maybe didn't create the environment that was totally supportive for you, which is, I think, true. This is the story that most of us live, right? And learned how to operate in this kind of linear way, because I'm not sure that there was an option. And yet, for whatever reason, you put yourself in a situation where you were able to kind of blossom, right? Because I mean, I would argue that the creativity that you exhibit daily has always been in there. And it sounds like before you didn't even know that, or you didn't know to the extent that it is now that was in you. And yet there was something in you that made you go, yeah, man, I can be a prosmet. What is that? I don't even know what that is, but sure. Yeah, I'll give that a try. Yeah. I mean, to me, that decision in that moment separates you from many, many people who would never put themselves forward without having some kind of knowledge. And you're like, fuck it, let it ride. Let's see what happens, which then gave you this opportunity to explore all of these qualities that you brought to the situation.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. Yeah, it was a great vehicle to open that up and to show me that there's a different way. And I'm glad I had that opportunity for sure. It was a huge risk, but I feel like I was a perfect age to do it because I was new to the industry. Nobody really knew me. I was working on these crazy low budget movies, making hardly any money. So it was a perfect thing for that. And then it just worked. And then that keeps rolling. That momentum starts. And then you just build that confidence up.
Well, I think every time you're successful, right, it adds, it sort of creates that foundation and makes it easier to take, it's that like opening that Overton's window of your ability to tolerate risk. You're like, oh, that kind of worked. I guess I can push a little bit further next time. Absolutely. And it kind of expands. Sorry, Michelle, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to also to say, and like what I heard and what you were saying was also that sense of like community. You found like-minded individuals or people that were blossoming in the same way or just like suited to it. And you were just like, like a sense of belonging, right? Which I think like we
Yeah.
all crave so much as humans and is sometimes like difficult to find. And I can imagine if you never kind of felt that fully until that kind of moment, like it would just be like, oh, this is like a new home for me in a particular way. I'm going to stick with this and having that support of peers.
Yeah, absolutely. It was really neat. And I came up with these people and I still work with some of them today, which is amazing. So yeah, we all kind of blossomed together. It was a neat time because it's different now in the industry because it's a different way to get in than what we did. Because I went through the whole non-union process and then smaller shows, bigger shows, that kind of thing. Whereas you can just become a member now. It's still hard, but it's just a different process. So I had a big lead up to it with all of these people that are like-minded, and it was great. And we were all learning as we went because the non-union world, they just throw you in. It's just like, go get her, go get her. So it's a bit
Yeah,
like,
you're all in the same boat, right? You're all
yeah,
like, oh, let's figure this out together, which I think is really bonding.
yeah, it was totally bonding. And like, and in the non-union world, there's no mistakes. There are mistakes, tons of them, but you just learn from them, and they don't have the money to reduce shit. Like you just keep pushing along.
Yeah, you're like,
So
oh,
there's kind of
now we don't have a sword. You
Yeah,
know?
that we don't have a sword. Sorry, yeah. Or
Too
you're
bad.
or you learn how to glue that sword together really fast because you only bought one,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, you learn on your feet that way. It's amazing.
all right. So I do have to ask, all of these positive things that you're discussing that all sounds very exciting. How do you manage stress? It's got to, I mean, that seems to, it's got to be the downside of the excitement and the creativity and all the rest of it. There's a certain amount of stress that goes along with this.
Absolutely. Like when you have a deliver, like when you have to deliver, you have to deliver it. Like you don't want to be that department, like I mentioned earlier, that holds the production up. So if your phaser guns are being built and they pull the schedule up 3 weeks and they don't care, they're just like, well, we have to shoot because this actor has to go in.
Yeah.
Okay. And then there's usually a ripple effect in the sense that, well, this is going to cost us more. And then they always push back on that. But there's always the stress factor. It is hard to manage the stress sometimes. I've been on some shows, I could probably name 4 or 5 in my career where the stress has been huge. And I try to surround myself with people that I trust, specifically my team, that we can play off each other so nobody gets too stressed out. But again, when you're on set and your space helmet's failing, and everybody's looking at you and they've been shooting for 13 hours and the crew hates your guts because you have to take the helmet off again to wipe it, and they're all wanting to go home because they're tired. I mean, that stress is like, you learn just to push it away and try and get through it. And everybody has an opinion on a film set too. Like they're like, "Ooh, have you tried this? Hey, like all of these things that you've tried, they're trying to be kind, but it drives you crazy. So stress is something we deal with for sure. It does burn out people,
Yeah.
and it's something we take seriously. But you try to like deflect to your team and how spread out that. So inevitably, I'm the department head, so I will wear it, and I will wear it for my team if they mess up within
Yeah.
reason,
Yeah.
obviously.
But it also sounds like there's a healthy you like you've got a healthy way of using compartmentalization, right? And I think sometimes does that resonate with you?
Yeah,
Like in the
absolutely. Yeah,
moment, you're able to be like, I got to pack that away for now. I can't deal with that right now. I got to
yeah,
like deal with this in front of me. I'll deal with that later. And I
yeah,
think that sometimes in therapy, there's a misunderstanding that compartmentalization or suppressing things is a bad idea. And what we often tell clients is like, no, 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 those are really great skills because
yeah.
sometimes if your visor is failing and everyone's yelling, you can't freak out. Like there isn't really
No,
the opportunity to feel all your feelings all the time, right? And so the idea of being able to use these strategies to get through whatever the crisis is, and then once you're in a place that's calmer, then you can unpack some of the feelings, then you can sort of process what you've gone through. But
yeah,
again, to me, that's a really great example of that flexibility, right? You deal with the stress in the moment, but you don't process it in the moment. You save it for later, get the
yeah.
job done, and then you can do the processing, right?
It'll just muddy the waters if you get too stressed out and you let that bog you down. You gotta
Yeah.
finish. You gotta finish the game.
That's kind of like the first part of what I was
Hmm.
thinking, but like what the kind of like cost of that is, right? So it's like
Yeah.
that moment, like, yes, you have to kind of compartmentalize and like maybe you're having like big feelings and my feelings are down here now because I have to deal with this, right? So then it's like, but you can't keep packing those feelings
No,
down there, right? It's like So what are kind of your strategies to kind of get the stress that you had to compartmentalize like out or processed in some way?
It's a really good question. We do have therapists on set now, which is a new
Mm.
thing for studios because there's a lot more accountability. So we can go talk to somebody if something goes sideways. That's pretty new. It's only been about
Mm.
3 or 4 years. But I think talking to my team and talking stuff out is really good. Like when we get back to the set and we go back and like we just download each other. Can you imagine? Like, this is what happened. Can you believe it? So we talk about like that. I think talking about things helps as well. And the other stressful part of working in this industry, and probably any kind of job, I'm sure, is that once you, like right now, I'm not working. So I have no obligations to shooting or anything like that. So everything is just, it's just quite relaxed. It's nice. I haven't had a break in a while. But when you're working on a show, even on the weekends or when you're not shooting because you're prepping, you're worried about everything. Like there's a constant hum there. So it's not like I go Monday to Friday or whatever my shoot schedule is, go home Friday and I turn my mind off. I'm thinking about all the stuff that's happening that I still have to deliver. So when you're shooting, you're never not shooting. Even if the crew is sleeping because they're working nights and I'm prepping, I wake up in the middle of the night, make sure the crew's fine. So there's this constant hum of stress. So you just kind of have to compartmentalize it and make sure that it doesn't weigh you down because you can't be that fucking stress ball because people pick up on that, right? And you do have to, like Katie said, like, okay, I'm going to put this away and I'll deal with the shit that we're dealing with. Let's get through this, what we're doing, and I'll unpack that later. So I've become really good at that, actually.
Mm.
I can attest to that firsthand.
Yes.
No, man, I mean, Jim is your guy in a crisis. Absolutely. So can you tell us what was one of the shows that you remember working on that really kind of was transformative for you?
Well, the Saw movies were interesting back in the day because we took them over after they shot the first one in LA and they came up here. And that was a big pivot for me because it moved my career from a smaller union called NABET. And then we were
Mm.
grandfathered in, I did Saw 2, then Saw 3. We were grandfathered into IA, which opened up a whole new world for me of possibility for shows. And there's just a different machine behind that because it's more of an international union. There's divisions between everybody's jobs. It's not like a potluck picnic like NABET was. It's more like a
Mm.
corporate business and it runs like that. Like everybody's streamlined and does their jobs. For career wise, that changed it. But I think one of the more creative shows I did was The Expanse, the
Mm.
space show for originally Sci-Fi Network. And then Amazon ended up picking it up after we pushed the fans.
You pushed them
Pushed
actually,
them
but yeah.
because that show we went in and we were like, oh, we're creating this whole world. And when you world create, it's pretty exciting because and it's based on a book. So you've got what the fans like. When you go to work on a Star Trek or that kind of thing, there's already canon. So there's a world that's already created that you're building on top of. But when you go in blinds and you start creating this world out of nothing, it's pretty amazing. And there was a lot of freedom there. And everybody seemed to trust each other. So that
Mm.
was a show where you could just do your thing and everyone's like, okay, you got it. Don't worry. I'm going to let you be who you can be and you're going to deliver this thing because we know we can trust you. That was a great show to work on. And from that, it just the confidence got better and bigger because of that was a big show with lots of moving parts mechanically and
You still have active fans, I think, don't you?
yeah, there's people that cosplay the stuff we've made, so it's pretty neat. So when you see people buying the Japanese jet fighter helmets you bought off eBay because that's something that was inexpensive and you can turn into a space helmet. And by the end of the run of the show, we couldn't buy those helmets anymore because the fans had bought them all up to build their own. Of course, fans are important, so I would just send them sticker packages for their helmets randomly and they wouldn't know who it was from. Like I'd say, hey, what's your address? And they're like, who are you? And I'd be like, I'm the prop master. And then I'd send them a sticker package because I would just have graphics print another sticker package off. So they would like to try and interact with them because that's kind of fun, right? Why would
Yeah.
so
Yeah, especially when it's like on a show that you said, like, I guess there's maybe a more sense of like ownership, right? When you've
yeah,
helped create something or even just like poured more of yourself into it, right?
yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And so like yeah, even the desire to have it picked up again and like being able to point the fans that way because it was meaningful to you, like that was something that you built with everybody else.
Whereas like Star Trek is a huge corporate CBS show and you got to toe the line, right? You're working for CBS, and you can't break your NDAs and stuff like that. So, well, you could, like, you're not supposed to, but it was more of a creative, like, it felt like big art camp doing those shows. It was really beautiful.
Amazing.
So, you know.
All right. Well, thank you so much for spending some time with us today, Jim. And is there somewhere that people can find you if they want to like know more about your stuff, know more about what you've done?
I'm on IMDb.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. You were just working on your IMDb, hey?
I was updating my IMDb. I was updating because I was lazy. I hadn't done it in years. Updating my IMDb. There's a couple of interviews with me and Adam Savage from Tested, and I've met him a couple times. He was great. Yeah, let's look around.
So just YouTube you.
Just
do a little
YouTube.
Google search. Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Jim. Such a pleasure.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
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 That it?